Hello and welcome to a very special podcast in partnership with the National Talent Academy for Film and TV Drama and GAZE Film Festival. We are delighted to be joined by three of the participants of starGAZE. This is a platform for LGBTQI talent that gives participants access to Irish and international creatives, full festival access and a mentorship with an established LGBTQIA filmmaker. Applications for next year's programme will be accepted until the 14th of April at 5 p.m, so check out nationaltalentacademies.ie for more information. So today we are joined by cinematographer Alba Fernandez, producer and screenwriter Philip Emo, and director and screenwriter Hiram Harrington. So thank you guys so much for chatting with us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, absolutely.
So you are part of a really exciting scheme. starGAZE has been a development program. I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about what your experiences have. Actually, first, I was wondering if you would introduce yourselves. That's probably the best way to go because you're very talented, creative people in the industry. Give us a little sense of where you came from, what's your background, and what you're working on. So Alba, we'll stick with you.
So I'm Alba Fernandez and I'm a cinematographer based in Dublin. I came out of film school wanting to wield the camera and forever wanting to be behind the camera. I think when I came out of film school, I was a bit naive in that I didn't realize how tough it was going to be as a woman in the industry. But I stuck to it because I'm a very stubborn person, and now I'm here being mentored by the one and only Kate McCullough. So
She's incredible. And what are the projects that you love to do? What's your favorite thing to do to capture on screen?
I like to think that I like to capture quite a lot of things. But specifically in the last couple of years, I've captured a lot of male toxicity, which I think is interesting to look at through a female lens, or just like a not specifically male lens. But yeah, I think the stories that draw me in are stories that are about human emotion and just kind of like what happens when you push someone to an extreme and then kind of reel them back from that. I find it really interesting to lens and light those people. So I guess people-centered stories that I can make visual, like I can make a visual impact with.
What has been your favorite project of yours so far?
God, my favorite project so far, I've gone blank entirely. I don't think it's necessarily a project. There's a couple of short films that I really liked, namely Animal, directed by Cody Farron, and Wait, directed by Dale Bolger. Again, two very male toxicity, extreme stories. But I think in the last year or so, I've wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone and just try random stuff. So I've ended up doing a lot of music videos and kind of commercial and documentary and stuff. So I just really want to soak that up to continue being able to put into my narrative approach.
Okay, and Hiram.
Hi, yes, my name is Hiram Harrington.
Hiram.
Don't worry, listen, everyone and their mothers pronounces it wrong. It's yeah, I'm a writer and director and like general dog's body from originally from North Dublin, but now based in city centre. I was always into writing at a very, very like young age. I like used to get given out to for reading books under the table in class or like for writing my own little stories when I should have been doing maths equations or learning spelling. But I it kind of like came then when I was a teenager that my love of movies really took off. I had some like kind of sketchy mental health issues growing up, and my big like relief kind of around the age of 14, 15 was getting really into horror movies. I just found like this really nice escapism through them. And I think that's something that's carried with me throughout my whole career. So like I write a lot of various different genres now. I've written for radio dramas, for soaps, and for like shorts and TV. And but yeah, I suppose now I like my personal great love is horror, but I make a lot of my sort of, I guess, professional like work through writing for TV, and then also I've been kind of doing a few music videos in the last year, which has helped me develop my directing style. But yeah, I suppose my background is like mostly in writing, and then in the last couple of years, I've really kind of taken to directing and want to pursue that. So yeah.
Horror. So horror is such a it kind of gets called one thing, but it's so like it's such a huge range of
Oh,
stories. What
sure.
what would be the ones that you loved growing up? What would be the ones that influenced you? And then what, how do you like to tell the stories that you like? Like, how do they manifest?
Great questions. I suppose like one of my first, I've like there were two horror films that I think really changed my life, and they're like really popular ones. So nothing. I'm not going to say anything too fancy here, but when I was 8 years old, I snuck downstairs when I couldn't sleep one night, and my parents were watching Alien on the television, and I stuck my head around the door and was just kind of watching. And I was like, "Oh, what's this?" I saw Sigourney Weaver, obviously, and my brain just went, "Oh my God, who's that woman?" But I remember it was I got to it a few minutes late just when the chest burster scene was happening, and I saw it happen 8 years old, and I like you screamed behind the couch, and my dad was like, "Oh my God, what are you doing down here? This is ridiculous." But then my parents made me sit and watch the rest of the film because they knew if they let me go after just seeing that and not seeing that the aliens like get defeated at the end, that I'd have nightmares for weeks. And even though the aliens did get defeated at the end, I still had nightmares for weeks. So I was terrified of horror films for like a couple of years and was just like Janie Mac, don't want to see them, don't want to look at them. My mother was a big Arnold Schwarzenegger lady, so like we did a lot of the sci-fi bordering that stuff. But then when I was 14, I watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the first time and it changed my life. Like I single-handedly can point to that film as being like the one where I realized, God, yeah, this is all I've ever wanted to feel in a film. And I was sweating. I was like tense. I was like disgusted. And at the same time, I couldn't turn it off. And it changed my mind of what films could be. And I think that was really something that has influenced me as a filmmaker in that like I love feel bad stuff. I know there's a big kind of push at the moment with how shit the world is to do kind of very positive or at least heartwarming or have stories that have some kind of joy in the end. And I think there is a place for that, and I think that's wonderful. But I think I really, as a filmmaker, enjoy confrontation, and I think when it comes to my own stories, I don't like to have a big song and dance happy ending. I love a catharsis, I love a release, but I think after those happy moments you get at the end of film, life goes on and it's still hard and horrible. So like, why not acknowledge that? I'm saying this with a big smile on my face as if I'm telling a big joke, but like I actually just love films that have like horribly rattling endings that like just stick with you for days. So I guess I try and do that in my own work, and I guess going forward, that's kind of the ethos I want to have. So yeah, that's me.
God, that's so kind of powerful. I do think, especially with horror, that you it is saying something, and it's like revealing the truth and awfulness of the world and the violence that's underneath everything. And I think like part of why I'm drawn to it, and I do think particular people that have different experiences tend to be drawn to it. Like I'll always remember there was like two films, and it's like, do you like Nightmare as a kid? Did you like the Nightmare Before Christmas, or then there was like some other, or Coraline, or did you like, those kind of like happy, smiley, everything is lovely Christmas films? And it's like the if you've had like a difficult childhood, you're more drawn towards that darkness because it's truth and it's representative of that pain, and you get to visualize it and share it with other people in that way. That provides catharsis, maybe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I think there's something so uh so really wonderful about seeing someone in experience, I don't know, a level of a horrible emotion that you've experienced yourself and seeing like, oh God, it's there, it's real, and I didn't make it up, you know? And I think like I don't know, that is something I'd really love to continue to do because I think our Irish people have like a fantastic tradition of like storytelling and ghost stories, and although they're like very much like classical warnings about how like society works or you should be careful of going here or saying this or doing that. I think like I think we need to lean into it more. I think Kate is like one of the first filmmakers to really go into it, like into the history and tradition we have around scares. And I think over the last few years, there's been more and more films like that coming out, which I don't know, it's just exciting. It's exciting. It's an exciting time to be, I don't know, someone who loves horror and someone who wants to make horror. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Such a
that's me.
such an interesting thing. And it's such a visual um process as well because of the scares. And Albert, tell me, about, I know this sounds, when you're prepping and when you're filming and when you're sort of getting to terms with a project and what that means and what that looks like in your mind and working with the director, like what is your brain doing in those beats? Like you presumably you've always been like a strong visual thinker, but in terms of like capturing those images and like building that world and then working collaboratively to build that world, describe to me what that process is like. And in terms of I know, like this doesn't feel tangibly linked, but it's very much so about like communicating to the audience and connecting with the audience, like maybe through that storytelling thing or visual storytelling. And I'm like, are you picturing what they're feeling at any point? Are you, um, like figuring out what's happening and where everything is? Are you figuring out the physics of the lighting? I'm just really interested to what that process is like for you.
Yeah, so as a DOP, I really enjoy when I read a script and I can immediately lift it off the page. When I can, like, directors that have a very, like, there's some directors that are more actor led or more visual led, but there's like the great directors that I've had the pleasure to work with so far have both, have a nice sweet spot between them. Their writing already is visual, so what I need to do there is kind of lift it and embellish and just add like it's just kind of push it past the line. Do you know what I mean? They mightn't be necessarily technical people, they're not thinking about lenses or lighting, but they are thinking about a mood. So what I would do, like in terms of like, A to B kind of process is I read the script three times, one to understand the story, two to really start making references and notes, and three to kind of pop out any moments that we could do any kind of cool shot or anything sort of, you know, what's the word? Indulgent visual shot that will elevate that. And like, yeah, so my process, like when we're talking about genre, that is a specific area that I would love to move into visually because it just gives so much. Like already on the page, there's so much for me to play with. So yeah, like it would be I'd read the script three times, I come up with references, I have a chat with the director, not necessarily about what they want, but what kind of person they are as well and what they're trying to tell because that'll help me kind of find just fill in all these gaps that I might have visually, that I can then just exploit and like really stretch out and really flesh it out with them.
And what's it like then watching you, like as again as someone who's kind of creating that and building and capturing it in that way, and what's it like then watching it for the first time on that big screen with the audience?
Oh, it sucks. Like
Oh,
it is
really?
so
Doesn't you be like,
it's
oh, finally, yeah.
it's so nerve-wracking, especially like with the type of budgets that I've been dealing with. Like they're quite small. People are always so ambitious and they might have like, 10 or 20 grand less than they should for this. Um, I think that nerve-wracking feeling has kind of been dropping. In the last year or so, I do feel a bit more, confident in my work and the choices I've made. And then, you know, you can do what you can do and then you've done past that. I think and I personally on a mental health side, I need to tell myself to be okay with my work. But yeah, like it's the same thing. Like you watch your own movie and you know where the strings are. Do you know what I mean? But it is like I do feel like it's never like when I watch it, especially like when I'm in Galway or anything like that. It's never this thing of like, look at my work. It is very much like, look what we've done. Do you know what I mean? Like everyone that was on this set really wanted to be on this set and really, worked for nothing and really believed in the story. So I think that's more of a magical feeling than being like, oh yeah, I did a great job. Do you know what I mean? But yeah.
It is magic. Like it is magic. Sometimes you can when you want, but that's the thing. It's the that extra element where when everybody is working together, it just builds something that's so beautiful and powerful and that connects with people and changes people and their minds in a way that like 1,000 news articles or studies or anything couldn't. It connects with people so deeply. And I just and even in terms of picturing the world, like when you read a script, are you going, that's what that lighting setup will be, this is the best way to do it? Are you like the way that you process information as well when you watch a film, does that change?
It's weird because like when I started, I would read a script and then marry myself to an idea that I hadn't had someone else that like I didn't kind of discuss with someone else, and I'd find myself trying to convince directors of it. Whereas now I just kind of picture it like it's gonna sound so wankery, but I do picture it like a little bit of like a what is it like a block of clay. Here's the outline, and then when I bring in my other collaborators like my gaffers or ACs, my grips, whatever, that's when we start shaping things down. Like it's I'm the bridge between the technical and the creative on set. Do you know what I mean? So it does start with kind of a rough blob of what we're going for, and then these technical people will help me like really like give that nuance and give that kind of visual nuance. So I think what I'm saying is I've learned to step away a little bit from my ideas until I'm on a recce or on the set.
Okay, sorry, Philip, welcome. Gonna pick on you.
Great, yeah. So I'm a screenwriter and a producer, and I went to the film school at IDT, graduated in 2019. I kind of did various production jobs for a couple of years and tried to do like my own short film projects in between that. And then 2 years ago, I co-founded a production company with my friend Killian Casey, who's my producing partner, my work husband, and we produced a self-funded short film. And then after that, we produced a Screen Ireland funded short film, and I also wrote that too. So now we're kind of looking to get into the feature film and television side of things. So yeah, that's kind of a quick kind of run through of what I do.
And screenwriting and producing are very different hats. What is it about building the world as a writer? What is it about the stories that you wanted to tell?
Yeah, I suppose with the things I write, it usually starts off as something personal and then trying to evolve it into something else, you know? So the Screen Ireland film that we just did is about a character who cares for his dad who has MS, and he's kind of closeted to the dad, and then a new fabulous effeminate Brazilian arrives to the house to help him care for his dad. And things unravel when he sees his dad be homophobic to the care. So I was drawn to that because my own dad had MS, and obviously that led to having such a complicated relationship with him. But I wasn't like his soul carer, but I was interested in what it would be like if you had a situation where you a son who was closeted to a parent, like they only had each other, seeing them kind of in a world where they only kind of had each other. So yeah, it kind of like starts off for me with the personal feeling that I want to explore, but then I definitely want to take it to somewhere else. Knowing my own life is probably quite boring, but I think it's good to start off with a personal inspiration.
And that's it. And in terms of, yeah, what you want to tell for features as well and building the
Mhm.
world, right now, is it the thing that you're prepping, is that like a lower budget feature? Do you have, say, aspirations to go like, oh, I'd love to do sci-fi, or, like what are the realms that you want to kind of move up to?
Sure, yeah. So I think the main stories we've been interested in telling so far are, well, queer stories, of course, coming of age, and I like comedy dramas a lot as well. So the one we're developing at the moment that's kind of our key focus is one that Aisling, who directed the focus short, is writing herself, which is kind of her own personal story a little bit and kind of a coming of age story again. So even though it's quite different to the focus short in terms of the narrative itself, there's some similarities with regards to tone there and regards to like kind of a singular perspective narrative. So yeah, I suppose those are the kind of things I like. I'm definitely open with regards to working in different genres and stuff, but I just haven't yet come across like a horror or sci-fi that I really want to do. Which is a shame because they're much easier to sell and stuff like that. But yeah, so far it's more so been the drama side of things. So
Brilliant. And in terms of producing, what would be sort of what have you found to be the most challenging bit of that you've, kind of had to overcome in your career?
yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I think like confidence is a big thing, I suppose, because every time you make something, like I'm sure, Alba and Hiram would say as well, you are putting yourself out there and you are always nervous that what you make is not going to be good. And, you need to find the people around you who kind of bring the best out of you, but also aren't afraid to challenge you either. So I think confidence is a big thing and stress. And I think a lot of people now as creatives, the difficulty is trying to like, support yourself. Like, obviously you need to make money, but then also kind of trying to find the time and the energy to make your own project. So that's always a difficult balance as well.
And you on the scheme are paired with John Butler. I think
Mhm.
mentorship and supports and like that, it is such a tough industry in so many ways that like having as much of a network and enough of yeah, that it's so competitive, it's so difficult, it's so like it's so kind of fueled by rejection at so many points that you're like to maintain the tenacity is so important. Tell me about the what your experience has been like on this scheme and working with John.
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, firstly, the week we did starGAZE and during Gaze Film Festival was amazing. I mean, Gaze for me is always like a yearly highlight anyway. One of my first films I produced, Breast Friends, played there, so it's a real special festival to me. And the week was a great experience, like spending time with the group and then also the mentors. I mean, and the guest speakers were just incredible. People like Andrew Haig and Peaches, to like meet them and hear about their experiences was outstanding. And John Butler himself, like he came in and then I kind of having heard him wanted him to be my mentor because he was just I thought spoke so well. And he's been such like a brilliant mentor. Like he knows so much about the industry. He's worked in it for such a long time. And he's very like honest and constructive with feedback, which is a great help as well. Because obviously he's a writer too. So having he was able to give feedback on the short film script that we did for Screen Ireland and like just feedback in general in terms of how I approach writing and things like that. So it's definitely been a big learning experience having that mentorship.
Great. And I'm going to ask you, but then this is sort of an open question as well. In terms of having authentic queer stories on the screen and being interwoven through what we watch and cinema that we consume, what do you think at the moment is missing?
Yeah, that's a good question. What? In an Irish context, I would honestly say I feel like there's a lot of Irish films that kind of eradicate the sex part of our lives. Like I feel like there's it's always it sometimes feels like we kind of make queer films as if it's to begging for straight audiences to accept us. And I think sometimes there's something to be said for trying not to do that and just kind of boldly and authentically like telling your story. Like Hiram with his short obviously did very bold film. So yeah, I think maybe just a bit bolder, I think.
Go, I might actually open up to you both. So, Alba.
What we're missing. I think personally, like the way I should just preface this before, I do write and I do direct. I don't think I'm going to be a prolific writer or prolific director. But I do like to approach stories sometimes and direct them myself from like with my cinematography background. But when I write stories or when I think about directing my next thing once every 5 years, I am interested in seeing the rest of the life of a queer person. Do you know what I mean? It's not just coming out and being accepted like that. I know Ireland is quite ahead in coming out and accepting people, but then we do hit a wall as a society in many, many things, just like, whether it's trans people, whether it's more, representation on screen. Like I don't necessarily need to write a queer story. I like stories that just happen to be queer or just that are nuanced the queer experience. Like what happens after we come out? Like how do we accept ourselves? Like what new trials, what new challenges do we have as queer people? Like whether we're in our new relationship or whether we're in our 10th relationship, what do we learn about ourselves because of our queerness? So I do like that nuance of queerness in film, and I think Ireland has a lot of voices that could offer loads for that. I just think coming out, unless it's a really, really cool coming out stories, I think we should really not move on, but just move past, and go into the next thing. Like I personally like the idea of queer joy. We can exist and we can have a really cool life. We will suffer through it the same way like straight people and other people suffer through like a breakup or whatever. But I think queerness does allow us this very nuanced lens that isn't very exploited in Ireland.
And you're talking about the lens, and I do think the lens, the camera lens itself, and that way that we look at things is so important and change where you can feel like, sometimes you can kind of feel a leeriness from the lens. Like, and you're
Well,
like,
I think that's in a practical sense, that's something I'm working on in the background at the moment with Gaze and Sam and Neve, or not Neve, Eve Collins. But I think in a sense, if you're going to make a queer story, try fill your crew, especially the below the line people, with queer people. Like their experiences are going to add to your story. Like conversations are going to happen on set that are going to maybe inform how you approach the scene. So don't just stop at the HOD. Like I've been in things where I've been hired as a DP HOD, which is great, but I make a point of filling my camera team with queer people or non-binary people or women. Do you know what I mean? But like do that for sound, do that for editing, do that for get that queer lens really there. So it doesn't feel like you're saying like it doesn't feel like it's leering and it's not like a box checking exercise either.
yeah, that's it. Like that framing, and it's so subtle, but you can feel the difference sometimes, or feel like the safety, or if like say if it's a very intimate scene, like how to make that space as safe as possible, or as yeah, because it is, but that is like I would say the lens, like that is the lens through which we view everything. That is,
Yeah, and that comes, sorry to go across you again, like that comes a lot, it's not just putting people, the queer people in those roles, it's also training those people, you know what I mean? Because there's so many less opportunities for queer filmmakers. Something like starGAZE is a great initiative, you know what I mean? But do train those people, do train those tech crew to be able to tell your story the best way possible. You know what I mean?
harm.
Wow, yeah, I mean, I've been nodding enthusiastically at everything Alba's been saying, and honestly, Philip as well. I so agree that, like, I think the Irish people love like a nice, very delicate, sweet coming out story of like, like a trans person. Oh, their family accepts them, or oh, they ask that cute girl at school to the Debs, and it's like it's adorable, like, and it's sweet, and it's like I'm like that's cool. And what else? Like I love gay sex. I think there's not enough of it in movies, full stop. But I think there's horrendously not enough trans sex, and I think that leads to my main kind of problem with the film industry in Ireland in terms of representation is that there are like very few trans people in these higher up places that like, if male directors are getting it, if male directors say get 30 films, then a female director might get 5 films and a trans director gets none of them. You know what I mean? Like there's like it goes definitely in like a weird hierarchy in Ireland that like trans people, there's an incredibly vibrant trans film scene, like a DIY underground. There's a lot of people making shorts, making music videos, making experimental films, but none of that actually seems to translate on an actual like industry scale. It's all very much outside of the mainstream, which like, it definitely is cool in one way because it means there aren't the same rules or expectations. But at the same time, I would love to see like a feature film made in Ireland by a trans person with a trans person in a leading role that isn't The Crying Game or like Breakfast on Pluto. It isn't Cillian Murphy in drag, basically. I would love to see a trans film that isn't Cillian Murphy in drag. And I don't know. I think like on a further extension that I'd love to see like more just trans people like again below the line like positions, but also just doing things like being in movies in the background, just trans actors for the sake of casting a trans person. Like I don't know. I think I'd love to see more people like me, I guess, is like the great big plea of like queer filmmakers is always more just like, I want to see people who look like me, who look like the people I know, who look like the people I love, who look like the people who care about me and who I care about. And I think that is something that's definitely lacking a little bit in like in a more kind of I don't want to say like a higher up level in the industry because it makes it feel like the underground stuff isn't as important when like I don't know, I feel like it's always been independent alternative cinema that has really connected with me the most. And I would love to see just more of that in Ireland, I guess, is I don't know, maybe the industry paying a little bit more respect to the independent film movement, but also just like being able to elevate queer stories and trans people in that industry would be fantastic. Because I think the industry does have a great push, especially like compared to other countries. Around the world, there is like this huge backslide in terms of like LGBT representations, but also just general diversity and inclusion initiatives. And I think we're lucky in that like it hasn't quite happened here yet. So while we still have it, I'm like pushing for as many people as possible to get on board with it. Because I think that is just like on a final note, I guess, something that's quite sad is that like it's I think cis audiences love to see queer people and trans people go through suffering and then get out of suffering as if like, oh, that's really bad that happened, but at least they're not doing that anymore. Oh, they're safe and they can go home and sit down and forget about it and not feel bad and go, oh, I've done my duty. I watched a film about like a sad trans person. But I would really love to see like, and something I'm trying to do in my own work is like make more confrontational cinema that's literally like, yeah, this trans person has a bad life and like, yeah, because of the world we live in is going to continue having a bad life. And like that fucking sucks, but they're still gonna survive, and that rocks. That there's freedom in that in saying like, yes, everything sucks, but we're still alive, and that's what matters. So I don't know. That was my big rambly thing there, but that's where I'm
Jordan.
at.
There's a filmmaker, Jonathan Hughes, and he has a talk that he gives. It's
Yes,
brilliant.
I love Jonathan
Healthcare
Hughes. Yes,
trauma.
I'm a fan for sure.
And like that, he's like people like watching the suffering, and he's like, why aren't things funny? Like, why aren't things silly? Why aren't things like sexy? Like, what is this? That like this, and but also, like, is there again like maybe a well-meaning but kind of like tone deaf attempt at like cis straight people at going, we're allies. Here's some money to talk about your problems. Like that, like maybe that's something that we that does exist and some of the nuance gets lost. Like, I'm not to complain, like great, everyone's getting money and the
I
things
think
are
I think queer people need to be made part of the decision making on who gets that money. You know what I mean? A queer person knows another queer person, and can differentiate the nuance because we're currently living that nuance. You know what I mean? So I think if when it comes to money, which is the most actionable thing into making a movie, I think queer people should be part of those decisions too.
yeah,
Like who to give it to or what queer person to award this money to.
yeah,
And I
that is
think like weirdly, stargaze has been so is such a great like I was so chuffed to see it existing because I was like, oh my God, something specifically mentoring queer people, run by queer people for a queer festival. I was like, this rocks. Like, please, please, just more of us, just more of it, I think is great because honestly, the more the better. Like the honestly, the more diversity you fund, the richer and more interesting your film industry is going to be.
so true, but that there's like a rich variety of storytelling that does feel like you also think there's a lot of talent then that are kind of being plucked up and going to the UK because it's so hard to break here. Like it's just the pots are so small and it's like like to become emerging is there, but like to take that next level to do that like next step is quite difficult in terms of like if you think of all those brilliant storytellers and stories. And in terms of just say, okay, you're more people making the decisions and going, oh yeah, this story is truthful, this is a little bit on the nose, and it lacks authenticity and detail. And they're the things that you would might old spot. What if just say again, if I was a a straight filmmaker and I kind of wanted to authentically include queer stories naturally to have that representation there, like what are the worst things that I could do and never do and should never do now that we know better and we're in an age where we understand other people have different lived experiences.
I think I'm gonna be very direct here. I think if you're a straight filmmaker, maybe you shouldn't make queer films.
No, no,
You know
no.
what I mean? Like,
I'm
yeah.
I'm a straight filmmaker and I have a group of people and I want to
Okay.
have queer people authentically represented in, say, my group of friends. But I don't want to be like, oh, this is like the sassy friend who's like, he's so mean for you or like lean into any shit stereotypes that we've seen like time and time again. Or, like what are the things that is like, this is the worst thing. Never do this.
I think the worst
Um,
thing you could do is make write a queer character without talking to queer people.
Yeah.
Like without, if you're a straight filmmaker and your entire circle is straight people or cis people, like first of all, that's just boring. And get some new friends. And then second of all, I guess it's like why would you want to write something that you know nothing about and have no interest in learning about? Like say if you wanted to include a gay character or a trans character, you got to approach it with love. Like you got to approach it as if, okay, this is a new person that I'm like getting to know. What would I want to know about them? How would I want like I don't know. I guess it's a sense of like treat them as if they're a person, treat them like any one of your other characters. Don't go, this is John, this is Michael, and this is my trans character. Go like, this is John, this is Michael, and this is James. You know what I mean? Like you gotta literally go, who's this? This is a whole complete person first, and then go, and also by the way, trans. Like it's gotta be the person that comes first, I think, at the end of the day. I don't know. It's hard to do in short films because it's such a little amount of time, and often you gotta get to the point really fast. But I think the joy of being a filmmaker and creative is finding new and creative ways to do those things that aren't stereotyping or that aren't trite and boring, I guess. Um, but yeah, I don't know. That's me.
And some changes that would make a big difference. Like some things you might like to see, yeah, different protocols, different types of representation on screen. Like what would be the things that looking into the future you'd be like, that should definitely happen yesterday?
I think queer people should stop being grouped into just queer stories. You know what I mean? Like you've got three queer people in front of you now, and we all have very, very different, very nuanced stories in film. Do you know what I mean? So I think grouping us under the same umbrella, while I'm queer and I can understand Philip's outlook or Hiram's outlook, we have lived very, very different stories. Like I'm a lesbian, like Philip is not gonna know being a lesbian. Do you know what I mean?
I am
Um,
too.
well, I've spoken too soon then. But you know what I mean? Like I think being grouped into the same under the same umbrella, while it's good for a lot of yeah representation, like caring, I think when it comes to that nuance and that, making characters that are authentic or stories that are authentic, you do have to see that, maybe Hiram's script is better than my one when we're going for the same funding because there's more nuance in his story, or like he's got his, technicalities right. At the end of the day, I don't think we should be rewarding people just for being queer. It's like we need to put in our own work as well. So it kind of goes both ways. You know what I mean? We can't expect something or can't expect a bursary just because we're the diversity hires, you know what I mean? But I think yeah, like that's what I think about it.
Yeah, and I think following up from what Harm's talking about with regards to being done with like films about the Troubles and stuff like that, like I think as well as that, the queer kind of narratives come into it, where I just think that Irish cinema and television, I'd love to see more bold stories, whether they're queer or not, just because I think that we've done too many, crime dramas, too many like, rural dramas and things like that. I think more contemporary stories. Think like with Kneecap, for instance, like I know it's a kind of music biopic, but I think one of the reasons it's done so well is like it's got a boldness to it and it's like a different kind of Irish film that we've seen before. And I'm hoping that that kind of opens the door to kind of there being, a bit more variety in terms of the films and TV that we see.
Yeah. Or like like even in crime, like why isn't there a trans woman who's a Breaking Bad head of a crime gang? Or
Like
like
I would love that, but they would kill her in the first episode. Honest to God, they like if trans men can survive, it's trans women are, ugh, like it's just. And it's like I'm very lucky to be working on developing a limited series with Escape Pod Media with the funding support of Screen Ireland right now. But one of the things we keep getting told by people is that it's like, oh, like why are they all like the four main characters are two of them are queer and cis and two of them are trans. And the thing that we keep getting from people is like, oh, is that like normal that they'd all be gay and be friends? And I was just like. Have you met like a gay person before? Have you met a gay friend group, And it's just it's very funny that people just keep being like, it's not realistic that there's this many gay people or that there's a trans woman from whatever in like, a rural Irish town. And I'm just like, that's just not true. You know, it's just no, just blatantly not true. There, I don't know. I think people always love to say to me that like you're the first trans person I've ever met, or like, oh, I've never met a trans person. That's like, oh, you're the first person I've ever met, and I'm like, I'm the first person that you've met that you know of, and it's just like we literally we're part of communities. We live amongst you, as the horror movie way would go, but at the same time, like, I don't know. I think I would love just to echo what both of you have said. I would love to see just like that presence actually translated onto screen because I think every place you go in Ireland there's a queer person, and like we're lucky enough to live in a country where like you're not persecuted for that, which rocks. Like I've done a lot of traveling in the last while for like writing stuff, and having been to like Eastern Europe for it, and just like getting warnings before I travel of being like, okay, just be careful what you say here and here, and like you know you can come yourself, but I wouldn't recommend bringing your boyfriend with you or anything like that. It's just like we're really lucky here to have this chance, and I think like we need to capitalize on it while we can, before they take it away from us. Let's fucking use it.
Right-leaning
Which
governments are not funding any projects that have any LGBTQI plus elements whatsoever. Like they're cutting down on that. If you have a character in a show, they're making you take it out. Like it's so terrifying. And like, I mean, that has always been the case for a lot of things that would play to like, middle America, and there'd be like a wokeness, but it would be like a soft wokeness that wouldn't be too in your face. Then like you feel this kind of happening across Europe where there's yeah, funding is being cut, projects are being axed, things are representing traditional family values, like what does that even mean? um but it's yeah, it's really worrying, and I do think there is that kind of desire for support. But I will say you can't go like, when you're going like that, the box ticking exercises. Oh yeah, so we have that one film, that's that done. That's all everyone's experience and one short film, therefore no other films can be on that slate. That's the thing that I think does might happen accidentally.
for
Yeah, for sure.
sure.
And sorry, you
Okay,
go.
so Philip, go on. I'm yapping away here.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like, as people who've in the queer community, we're aware of what it means to be marginalized. And I'm also conscious that like in some ways I've been privileged as well. So I think it's important not just to think about um, kind of your own experience and like what you want to see on screen and seeing yourself on screen, things like that, but also like who else in society is not seen. And I don't know, I'd say like a writer, I'm never kind of just going, oh, like I need to have this character in because they're going to fit in into some t ticking the box thing, as you say. Like I try to kind of authentically, consciously reflects just how things are. Like with my short that we did with Screen Ireland, the care is Brazilian in the film, but that made sense to me because like growing up, the cares that came to the house, a lot of them were from different countries, and like, reflecting the fact that we have a healthcare system that relies on people coming to the country. So yeah, I think it's about kind of being authentic and not just saying I want to write a story because I know we'll get funding and things like that, but actually this is it being the story you want to tell, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's really powerful. And I think in terms of your own future, like maybe things that have been unlocked through the mentorship in this, maybe doors that have been opened, like where would you guys see or want to go next? Like Philip, I know you're working on your feature film, but in terms of your own, yeah, personal stories and careers, if we go around, and I'll start with you, Philip, because you were chatting last.
Yeah, kind of just hopefully get the first feature like made in the next few years would be great, but continuing to kind of develop stories. Like anyone listening, feel free to get in touch. Like so yeah, continuing to develop features and TV series, kind of make our first feature film that would be fully funded in Ireland, and then hopefully after that move on to a co-production. Kind of like obviously with the short, I got to, kind of tell my own story in some ways. So it'd be great to kind of, for the next few projects, maybe tell other people's stories. And I'd love to start writing with other people as a bit more as well. I feel like we kind of write by ourselves a lot in Ireland, and it'd be great to kind of see more kind of writing collaboratively. I think it's really hard to write a feature film just by yourself. So I'm definitely looking to kind of, write with other people, not just myself in the future as well. So
Alba?
Yeah, so the like starGAZE scheme has opened quite a lot of doors, and I feel like I was thinking about this yesterday. I don't think Kate has opened doors for me. She's just completely smashed through walls for me. Do you know what I mean? Like it's I met her for the first time over breakfast and we ended up chatting for 3 hours and then I got brought onto a lens test and I got introduced to all these people and it's she kind of nearly helped me root myself in these new rooms that I'm finding myself in. Um, Not only as a woman in the industry, but just as a woman in tech, like in a technical role in the industry. It's helped a lot to kind of have Kate's hand to hold, I suppose. It's gotten to the point where I've been asked to be her second unit on a commercial we shot 2 weeks ago. Because there's a lot of trust there and there's a lot of, you know, it's needing that hand up, and just her kind of recognizing that. So I think I'm quite excited about the next like at least year for me. Like there's as I said, a lot of doors and a lot of walls smashed through by Kate for me. And yeah, like I'm starting to work on shorts that I align with a bit better, or like people that I align with a bit better. And just kind of yeah, kickstarting all these like, kind of long projects that will hopefully materialize themselves in the next year or so. So like without starGAZE, I would not have been able to again be in these rooms and like assert myself in these new rooms I find myself in. So it's helped quite a lot and it's kind of given me this massive boost of confidence of like we know you can shoot. Kate knows I can shoot. The people I've been working with in the last couple of months know I can shoot. It's just about self-actualizing and getting better and better at it. It's a direct result from starGAZE and from being part of this initiative. So
Because if you can see it, you can be it. Like if you recognize people in those spaces that maybe no one is like you or you don't feel
well
like
that's the thing and I've just gotten like I used to be really afraid of grips because they were like these hardy men from Dublin city centre, that like just lay tracks for you and push you around on the dolly. Whereas working with a grip with Kate, just there's different all these different forms of communication I'm learning about, and again, how to assert myself not just in rooms but on set, and how to assert my um my abilities, my cinematography abilities. So that's been a huge help. I just feel like I shoot anything now. So
Hiram.
I guess the scheme, to reiterate a lot of what the gang have said already, it gave me like a huge boost of confidence just in my own work. In that I was like, oh fuck, okay, 6 people were picked for this, and I am one of the 6 people. I'm one of these 6 emerging queer filmmakers. I was like, oh, that rocks. And I think like just getting to be in the room at first with everyone and getting to chat to like the other participants has been really cool. Like I suppose the program has helped kind of foster myself and Alba's like working relationship, which has just kind of been starting and growing over the last few months, which has rocked. Alba was actually hilariously the very first cinematographer I ever worked with in college, which was, I was miles less experienced than she was at the time, but I feel like now we're on a similar working level, which has been really cool to just like get to get to work with Alba again. And then same with Leah, who's in the other program of participants. She's like a fellow sicko trans filmmaker, and I adore her. So like that alone has been really fantastic of just being like, okay, there are other people like on the same wavelength and we're doing weird shit, and that's really cool. And then with Kate, it's been I'm kind of still baffled that it's still happening because I think like Kate has introduced me to like other like queer female filmmakers. There's like a group chat just for like film femmes and friends, and like that alone has put me in touch with a lot of people, other co-workers, which has been really cool. And I got the chance last year to shadow her on her newest feature film, which is going to be coming out like next year. And just like, being invited in on the post-production process and like getting to see like how it works properly on like such a scale. Because for me, post-production is like me and my laptop in the corner of my room with a blanket over me so I can like make sure the color looks right on screen, not like these like massive desks and just different people. And like, I guess learning from her in that way has been really cool, just because Kate was the first Irish filmmaker whose work I saw who I was like, oh my God, like that's what I want to be doing. Like when I saw her short Catcalls, I thought it was just phenomenal, and just her references from like German expressionism to like the Giallo influence in her work, I just think is really like aspirational, I guess, for me. And working with her in that way shows that, I guess, what I want to do as a filmmaker is possible. And she's made me feel like it's so much more possible, which is a really, really nice thing to feel. I think because for a long time I always assumed I'd be like hammering on the door of the industry. But I think that's been a really cool experience. And now with this short, she's helping me kind of bring to life, I guess. I'm still in the writing stages of it. I'm still not 100% sure what I want to do with it, but I'm excited to have her guidance on it. And I'd love to do that short in the next year or two. Once it's finally written, like I'll be able to know when, but I'd love to do a horror short. I'm working on a proof of concept with a friend of mine for a feature film that we're hoping to shoot this summer. It's a bit more artsy, kind of weird, psychological rather than like pure horror, but I'm really excited about that. I'm currently writing for Fair City, the soap opera, so I would love to keep doing that, to keep paying the bills, to hopefully maybe convince RTE one day to let us have a trans character on the show. But I think weirdly they're actually great for the L gay characters. I'm just like, come on, take it one step further, baby. So yeah, I'm enjoying where I'm at, and I'm really excited to see where the next few years go.
Brilliant. And finally, any closing thoughts, questions for one another? Anything you'd like to add?
Up the gaze.
Heard up
I
the
don't
gate.
think so, except for maybe just because the applications are open again for starGAZE for like people to apply because it is a really great scheme. And like the word networking is such a toxic word. And like, I think if you could maybe not think about that word too much and just think like we are in a collaborative industry, and the more you meet people, like you always learn, and building relationships is so important. So I definitely recommend to people to apply and like think of applications, even if you think you've only 2% chance, like it's worth just going for it. Like the worst that happens is it's a no, but it's worth trying anyway. And maybe if it's not this year, they'll know you for next year if you apply again. So yeah, that's what I'd probably say.
100% on Philip there. Like, I think the networking is a dirty word. I don't like it, but the fact is, like, we are all queer filmmakers hoping to make a space for ourselves and each other and each other's kind of work in the industry. So it's like, even if you don't have the same genre or vibe as everyone else, at least you know, hey, they actually understand what I'm going through a little bit here, which I think it's just the baseline for going, okay, actually, I'm not alone in doing this. It honestly, a big thing that the starGAZE program has made me feel is less alone about the world,
Hmm.
about the industry that we've all insanely decided to go into. So I think it's like been a joy, and like I'm excited for the program to continue, and I'm really envious of anyone getting to do it this year. I would do it again in a heartbeat.
I'd love to echo Philip and Hiram in that at the time when the applications were open last year, I convinced myself I shouldn't apply because it's not for me, even though I am like literally textbook the kind of person that should be applying to this. And I remember talking to Evan Horn about it, and I remember him saying, "Bitch, please, this is for you." So I just want to echo that sentiment to the whoever's thinking of applying. Bitch, please, this is generally so for you. And as Hiram and Philip say, it's not necessarily networking, and it's going to make you feel less alone and more supported. Like even down to like the group that we still have, I've been able to chat to so many people, like the rest of the group over the past year, just because we have that. Do you know what I mean? So, um, yeah, do it.
Do it, definitely. And thank you guys so much for chatting and good luck. We can't wait to see what you're doing next.
Thanks so much, Emma.
Thanks very much, Gemma.
Join us next week when we'll be chatting with the other three brilliant participants. And don't forget to apply for the scheme by the 14th of April on nationaltalentacademies.ie.